Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. This is Scott's Comics Retro Review. If this is your first time, welcome. And if you're returning, then welcome back. I'm glad you decided to come back for more. Anyway, this channel is dedicated to people who want to get into comics, but they're not sure where to start, or they're into comics and they just haven't read the books that I'm reviewing. So I'm currently doing this kind of a method to my madness. And if you go back to my videos from the beginning and you go through, you'll see what the method to my madness is. I'm currently up to my fourth favorite superhero, which is Superman. And a lot of the reason why Superman is the fourth favorite is because not only is he a great character, but you can kind of tie in the history of comics with Superman's history. And he deserves, in my opinion, a lot of the respect that he should get. Anyway, this is also Superman by John Byrne. I wrote John Byrne and Friends as a title because there are other people involved in the making of these trades. But it was John Byrne who actually got me into reading Superman. Go ahead and check out my previous videos to understand what I'm talking about when I say that. And on the cover of this one, we have Supergirl here. We haven't seen Supergirl since Crisis on Infinite Earths, 2 years prior. And I'm going to do a video on Crisis on Infinite Earths. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But in that series, that was one of the best Supergirl stories I ever read. And now we're going to see what Crisis did. Evidently, what they did was they erased pretty much everything that had gone before and started from scratch. And Supergirl was no longer part of Superman's life in this new reality. So for her to show up was actually kind of exciting. I wanted to see John Byrne's handle on her and take on her and what he was going to do with them. Anyway, this trade paperback starts off with it's the Inventors of Superman. The Inventors of Superman were by Byrne and Ordway. I had mentioned in my previous video that up until this point, Mr. Byrne was doing he was writing and drawing 2 Superman books a month. And then he took over the scripting stories with Jerry Ordway on Adventures of Superman when Marv Wolfman left. And my understanding from what I read by Jerry Ordway was that he would send the script to Superman, the plot, and he would send the plot to John Byrne, and John Byrne would kind of look through it. And the only thing he would really change is to make sure that the continuity flowed between the 2 issues. I had mentioned previously in another video about what happens when the continuity doesn't flow. And it's not really up to the creators, it's up to the editors. And at the time, the book that I mentioned, there was 2 different editors switching. One was leaving, one was coming in. And it created a continuity glitch. And in this book, I'm going to talk about what happens when the creators kind of get together and there's one editor and they can kind of, well, I don't know if there's one editor, we'll get to that in a second, but when the creators get together and work out the continuity issues between them. I did want to point this out. They put everyone's name backwards and that's because they're dealing with Mxyzptlk, who in the past, what you had to do is you had to get him to say his name backwards. And by getting him to say his name backwards, he would go back to his dimension. Well, those rules have changed, but they're still doing like a tip of the hat to him on that. And how they get out of it, I don't want to really reveal anything. But anyway, we come back to the next story, which is Superman. And it's story and pencils by John Byrne. And the inking is by John Beatty. And you could see that not only is the artwork beautiful, but the inking's beautiful. And what they're talking about is, I don't want to, look at that. Look how beautiful that is. I don't want to spend too much time giving anything away, but Superman starts to lose his powers. Then we come into the next issue where it's, again, the Byrne Ordway book. And, John Byrne did the cover, and Jerry Ordway did the interiors, and they did the co-scripting part, and I previously mentioned that. But in this case, Superman is losing his powers one at a time, and they got to figure out how to do that. how to fix that. So the next thing we have is Doom Patrol. And Doom Patrol was not a book that I had bought. It was never a book that I was that interested in. I believe the only time I bought the book was when John Byrne was writing and drawing years after this. But Paul Kupperberg is the writer, and I'd mentioned in my previous video that him and Mr. Byrne were friends. And the artist was Eric Larson. This is a very young Eric Larson. Eric Larson ended up going to Spider-Man and drawing Spider-Man, and then he left Marvel and helped form Image Comics, and he was doing the Savage Dragon, and he's now either president or publisher, I forget, of Image Comics. In either case, this is him very young in his artwork career. And I wanted to point out, without revealing anything, that what they're doing here, let me see if I can, I thought I marked it off correctly. I apologize. I mentioned in the previous video how I don't really do prep. And I knew I wanted to talk about it, but I wasn't sure exactly. I should have done a little bit more prep for it. Anyway, this shows Lana Lang and Clark Kent out on a picnic, and then he goes to respond to something. And I never bought this issue. I bought only the John Byrne Superman issues. So I picked up this one, and I'm like, look at this cool cover. You got Metallo here, you got Superman here, and Robot Man here and Metallo here. Metallo is a Superman villain, and he's the villain of this piece. Anyway, we cut to here where it shows Lana Lang talking to the Kents, and no surprise, but there's Supergirl. And there's some kind of mystery that they don't want to reveal about her. Then we cut away, and we start doing some things, and then, see, it was prior. Let me get to it real quick. In this book here, anyway, needless to say, I can't find it, and I apologize. What happened was the two creators got together and figured out how to fit the story in together so it made sense. I actually thought it was here, but maybe not. Again, I'm trying not to reveal too much. I don't want the surprises to, upset your enjoyment of the reading. So then we go back to Inventors of Superman again, and this time we don't see John Byrne's name on it. But what happened was Jerry Ordway did the full writing, and somebody else did the pencils, and somebody else did the inks. So that was an interesting take on what happened there. I wanted to show you that. And then we're at the Supergirl Saga. This is part one of the Supergirl Saga, and it is by John Byrne, and the inks are by John Beatty. Now, this shows something that's very different. And I had mentioned, look at that beautiful scene. Anyway, I had mentioned how there was a pocket universe. And the pocket universe was something that was created very quickly. And look at the artwork. It's just, to me, it's just beautiful. And the writing is also very, very good. But they talk about the pocket universe here. And what happened was back when Crisis was created, it was starting all over again. And when John Byrne came to DC, he had a list of unreasonable demands, which I think he would have negotiated on, but he called it that in his sense of humor. And one of them was that there would be no more Superboy. And as I mentioned in my previous video, he spoke with Paul Levitz about it, and they said, don't worry, we got it worked out. Then all of a sudden he gets a call, and he's got to drop whatever he's working on to figure out how there could still be a Superboy, even though there was no Superboy. And what they came up with was something that was not... I don't think everyone was happy with it, but in the short amount of time that they had to work on it, this is what they came up with. What happened was the Legion, their whole history is they would go into the past, or Superboy would come into the future. and they're 1,000 years in the future. And every time they went into the past, there was a certain type of Superboy in Smallville that they were used to. Well, one time, Cosmic Boy went into the past, and he was reading a newspaper, and it didn't match up with his memory or the history of what was going on. So he was trying to figure out what happened, and they took a bunch of Legionnaires who went into the past, and they figured out that there was a pocket universe, and the villain was the Time Trapper. And the Time Trapper took like a second of time from 1 billion years ago, and he created this little pocket universe so that they would have their adventures. Now, my understanding is that he did this to brainwash Superboy to fight against the Legion. The whole thing wasn't very clear to me. But I think based on the fact that they didn't have any time to do it, it made sense. Well, in either case, they go into the pocket universe, and who do they see? But they see Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor's got a full head of hair. And he's apparently the hero on this Earth in this pocket universe. So this is part of where I have a problem. I'm going to pull out some old Legion stuff here, right? This is a showcase book that talks about the old Legion. It reprints the old stories. And if this pocket universe was created to make the past that the Legion knew to be true correct, then this story doesn't make a lot of sense. Because in the pocket universe, here we have them going into the past to meet Supergirl. And it's the same Supergirl that we knew from before Crisis. Yet here, there's something else going on. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And then I have, I want to show you this real quick. Then I have the old Lex Luthor, and he's a villain, and he's got bald hair, and he was involved in the Adventures. So how does this one come about? See, what happens is, and they all of a sudden change it for the purposes of the Supergirl story. They change what this pocket universe was. And by the way, beautiful Jerry Ordway artwork. But this turns out to be my problem, is that again, they're doing the recap with the Time Trapper, and he's explaining what's going on, and this is the old Legion, and they were based on Superboy when his exploits when he was a boy, but this is the sliver of time that the Time Trapper captured, and in this case, they're saying that he changed it so that this new pocket universe wasn't the same as the old pocket universe. Which doesn't make sense to me. He eliminated all the superheroes, and he changed history, and that doesn't make sense. That's not how it worked from the previous story. In either case, we have another thing here that I kind of disagreed with on John Byrne, where he's talking about that he's going to be judge, jury, and executioner. And I won't give away any of that stuff. But that was actually John Byrne's last issue of Superman. And it was my last issue of Superman, too. I stopped buying the book because John Byrne wasn't on it. But this book, this trade paperback, is followed up by a Roger Stern, and it's the Superman Annual by Roger Stern and Ron Frenz. And I talked about them previously. But the reason it's included here is that we have a final written and drawn by John Byrne book in there. So in either case, what I do want to say is it's a recommend. I do recommend you buy it. I do have problems with this new pocket universe story. But other than that, it's very entertaining. John Byrne did the best Superman I'd ever seen. And I give it 2 thumbs up. So if you like the video, I've been meaning to say this too. I kind of got out of saying it. But I do provide a link down below for anyone who wants to pick up these books, where you can get them from. I don't know if they're going to run out. So I would say just, get it as quickly as you can. Maybe they'll keep them in print. Maybe they won't. But in any case, this is Scott's Comics Retro Review. Thank you for watching. Have a great day. Thank you. Bye.